A morning war veteran found himself facing a dilapidated medical facility that had been passed down to him, an unwanted legacy that others dismissed. The townspeople declared it worthless, a burden that should be left to decay. However, when his faithful companions started scratching desperately at the structure's walls, the secrets hidden within would transform his life completely. James Walker had witnessed combat zones that would break most people. As a decorated military hero, he wore his service medals with pride, yet carried emotional wounds far deeper than any visible injury. War had stripped away more than words could describe. Comrades, fellow soldiers, and the sense of purpose that once defined him had all vanished. Back home, the quiet felt more deafening than any battlefield explosion he'd experienced during deployment. His spouse had died years before, and the isolation ate at him like an injury that wouldn't mend. Sleep brought little relief, tormented by war flashbacks and the spirits of those who didn't return. Then came the unexpected letter. A legal notice about an inheritance. An ancient medical facility, deserted for generations, bequeathed to him by a barely remembered distant family member. Most people would have immediately put it up for sale. Yet James felt destiny was reaching out to him, though its purpose remained unclear. Upon arriving in the remote mountain community to collect his unexpected gift, the residents couldn't conceal their amusement. The medical facility, they claimed, was cursed. Completely worthless, one merchant grumbled. Only spirits dwell there now, another person murmured. Their comments hung in the atmosphere like fog, but James had long since stopped listening to skeptics and their doubts. The medical building sat on the valley's outskirts, consumed by creeping plants and darkness. Its glass panels lay shattered, exterior walls split with time's passage, as though the earth itself had attempted to erase all traces of its existence. To everyone else, it represented nothing but an ugly blemish on the landscape. To James, it presented a mystery begging to be unraveled. Standing beside him was Rex, his devoted German shepherd, a wartime partner who remained constantly loyal. While the community members shook their heads in disapproval, James held the leash firmly. This medical facility represented more than just architecture and mortar. It marked the start of something he couldn't yet comprehend. James's initial entry through the damaged entrance revealed air that felt thick and musty from decades of neglect. His footsteps resonated against the fractured floor tiles, each sound seeming foreign and intrusive. Weathered announcements still clung to the surfaces, their messages about wellness and optimism now serving as eerie reminders of forgotten souls. Rex moved ahead cautiously, his ears responding to every creak and groan. The animal's claws clicked across the flooring, his pace increasing whenever shadows danced through the corridor. Corroded hospital beds sat motionless, their wheels locked as if time itself had stopped. James ran his fingers along a reception desk, collecting dust that felt like cremated remains. Abandoned patient records lay scattered across the ground, their pages turned yellow and fragile with age. He crouched to examine a name, then paused when he noticed something even more peculiar. Family photographs had been left behind in one of the patient rooms, frames cracked but faces still beaming through the damaged glass. Rex suddenly issued a low, sharp warning growl, focusing intently on a darkened passageway that extended further into the building's depths. James felt his throat constrict. No breeze stirred, no sounds disturbed the silence. Still, the structure seemed to pulse with life, as if it had been anticipating his arrival. With every forward step, the enigma only deepened and grew more ominous. As James ventured further into the medical facility, Rex's actions became increasingly unusual. The dog wasn't simply being careful, he was completely absorbed by something. His nostrils flared, his tail remained rigid, every fiber of his being alert and tense. Without warning, Rex halted before a blocked entrance at the corridor's distant end, his paws clawing at the wooden surface. James gently pulled the leash. "Let's go, buddy," he said quietly. But Rex wouldn't budge. Instead, he issued another growl, the sound deep and cautionary, as though the barrier itself contained a danger too significant to overlook. James crouched next to his companion, placing his ear against the wall's surface. Complete silence greeted him. Yet Rex's determination troubled him deeply. Canines didn't behave this way without good reason. He pressed his palm against the door's exterior. The temperature felt noticeably lower than the surrounding structure, unnaturally cold. Something lay concealed behind that barrier, something Rex's senses had detected long before James would discover it. James stood uncertain, watching the sealed barrier while Rex's claws scraped frantically against the timber. Eventually, he retrieved a nearby iron bar and forced it between the frame and door. The ancient hinges protested with a moan that reverberated throughout the vacant corridors. With one final effort, the obstruction surrendered. What lay beyond wasn't another hospital section, but a slim concealed tunnel. The atmosphere that escaped felt stagnant, frigid, and carried a subtle metallic odor that made James's flesh crawl. He directed his flashlight into the blackness, watching particles swirl like apparitions in the beam's path. Rex charged ahead, nose pressed to the floor, tail stiff with determination. The passageway descended gradually, leading toward the structure's core. James proceeded cautiously, his boots crushing scattered debris underfoot. At the tunnel's conclusion, he discovered a massive door secured with heavy bolts. After forcing the entrance open, James stood motionless in shock. The chamber contained multiple wooden containers stacked along the walls, shrouded in spider webs, and bearing official government markings. Rusted medical devices surrounded the boxes, while sagging shelves groaned under the weight of age, journals, and documents. His heartbeat accelerated dramatically. This wasn't simply an abandoned medical facility. This represented a secret that someone had desperately tried to keep buried forever. James approached the closest container, his flashlight shaking slightly in his grasp. The wood had become brittle and cracked with age, yet the government identification remained legible enough to decipher. Property of U.S. Army Medical Corps. His stomach churned with unease. Why was military equipment stored in a deserted civilian hospital? He forced the cover open, sending dust particles flying through the air. Inside sat rows of sealed containers, medical supplies, and carefully organized surgical instruments that appeared untouched by time's passage. Underneath lay envelopes, stamped confidential. James extracted one document, his hands trembling as he examined the contents. The text made his blood freeze. Classified documentation about clandestine experiments, patients admitted under fabricated identities, and medical procedures that had never received official approval. James's pulse raced as he knelt beside the first container, his flashlight creating long, wavering shadows across the floor. He used the metal bar to force open the lid, the wood splintering with a loud crack. What he found inside exceeded all expectations. Carefully wrapped medical supplies lay pristine and untouched after decades of storage. Injection devices, sealed medicine bottles, and surgical tools gleamed faintly, preserved as though awaiting future use. But the supplies weren't everything. Hidden beneath, James discovered folders marked Top Secret. He opened one file and felt his chest tighten with dread. The papers detailed patients brought to this location under false circumstances, soldiers, wanderers, individuals whose disappearance wouldn't trigger investigations. Medical experiments had been conducted on them, with results meticulously documented and concealed. Rex growled once more, scratching at yet another container. James forced it open and gasped. Heavy bags filled with gold coins sat inside, tarnished but unmistakably genuine. His breathing became labored. The hospital hadn't closed due to failure. It had been deliberately silenced. This place had served as a trading post where influence, money, and human lives were exchanged in complete darkness. Now, for the first time in generations, its terrible truth had clawed its way back into the light of day. James collapsed onto a broken chair,